We have a special guest today. Now, who has been in the program longer than 2 years? Raise your hand. Hi, 2 years. Okay, so a few of you will recognize our guest speaker. His name is Mr. Jim Sage. He's a terrific friend of Camden. He is on the operating committee, so he helps us manage the program, in addition to some wonderful things he does for us over and above being on the operating committee. But most importantly, he is an unbelievable resource. Okay? His specialty happens to be IT, although he's recently delved into a few other careers. But he was the head of IT at the University of Akron. You can read his bio. Please do read his bio when you get a chance. But now I want you to listen and take notes. IT, I constantly talk about. And I'm not, believe me, the IT wave passed me by. The reason it did is because I was in sales. And in sales, I traveled 3 weeks out of every month, sometimes 7 days a week, all over the country. That's number one. And that was before Wi-Fi. So if you did, you had this big honker of a laptop, of a computer that you carried around, or you needed to have a desktop, right? And you needed to be in an office to connect, and connecting sometimes took you forever, and even in a hotel room, you could be waiting a half an hour to get a connection. So IT just went past me. In addition, for my 40 years in business, I probably had an administrative assistant, 25 to 30. So guess what? They took care of all of my IT needs. So really, there wasn't a need for me to do it. But believe me now, I mean, even when I want to do a spreadsheet that says I'm getting ready to fill jobs in the summer, and I want to do a spreadsheet of 30 students, and there's certain information I want on there to have at my fingertips, it's a chore for me. I mean, you know, my wife has to help me, or you know, Mrs. Bruner has to help me, or whatever. But it's really a struggle. And yet, my 28-year-old son, you know, can run a computer like it's nobody's business. And he's in marketing, and my other son, Dan, he's actually repairing computers right now as a job. So it's fantastic. But I was really struck me this week. I was in the doctor's office, and happened to be West Medical, and Dr. Locke came in, and he was talking to one of our students, and he brought up technology. He brought up the fact that he struggles with it now, and he needs it. So, and here's a medical doctor, you know, with a PhD that's talking about technology. So it just struck me again on a timely basis. We have Mr. Sage here, that this profession you're going to need, whether you're an archaeologist or a brain surgeon or accountant or a nurse or an engineer or a lawyer. So please listen up, take good notes. You know I'm always preaching about IT as a minor. You can't go wrong. So whatever you have as your major, and this is what I want to be in life, and you want to go, you can never go wrong with IT as a minor, and something to support, you know, what you're gonna do when you grow up, okay, so to speak, in your career. We have a couple of students, Jacob happens to be one, that's their major. Caleb Davinsky is off at RIT, and that's what he's doing. So, you know, listen up. These are well-paying jobs. There's many, many, many of them, and I think you're going to find this interesting. The last time that Jim presented, I was blown away. So, without further ado, Mr. Sage, welcome.
It's not going to work. Thank you, Tom. Yes.
It's really great to be here. As Tom indicated, we've both been in the business world for a long time. What I'm going to share with you is my own experience. I started working in the 70s, if you can believe that. So I've seen some huge evolution in technology over those years. What I'd like to do is share with you a little bit of my story. Because I'm not so certain my background's not different than many of yours. First of all, I introduce you to some of the people that are really special to me. The lady in the gallery up in the top right corner, that's my wife. For whatever reason, she decided to go back to school to get her MBA at age 57, and I was so proud of her. She's a long-term employee at Spunker Corporation in Orville, worked there for 30 years. Decided she wanted to get an MBA, and at 57 she did it, and got a 4.0, which is, I'm really, really proud of her for that. Picture in the middle are my two daughters. My daughter Brittany on the left is 29. She works at PNC in Pittsburgh and is a communications and marketing person. And my daughter on the right is Kristen, and she's a CPA and an accountant and works for Deloitte. So, and in the bottom left corner is me. That's my passion. I raced motorcycles for 20 years. Stopped about 5 years ago when I hurt myself for the last time. So no longer competing, but still go to the track and ride with my buddies occasionally. My history. My dad was a farmer in a railroader in a little town called Willard, Ohio. So when my dad came home in the late 60s, said to me, Jim, I don't know anything about them, but the railroad is committing to something called computers, and I think you need to get involved in it, because it's going to be big. Had no idea what he was talking about, did some research. What I found was a 2-year program, the last 2 years of my high school, and he had a vocational school, and I went through the program. And so when I graduated from high school, I went right to work in what was called at the time data processing. So I had a couple certifications, and that got my first job. So I went to work in the IT world as a programmer, and for the first part of my career, I really focused on understanding the technology. I was a programmer. I did a little bit of network design and administration. Believe it or not, in the early 70s, there were no PCs, so I didn't have a lot of PC exposure at that point. I became a systems analyst, a program manager, a data processing manager, so I kind of worked my way through the technology in IT during the very early parts of my career. I knew at that point that I would need a degree. I didn't have one, and I knew that there would be barriers if I didn't get one. So I went off, got a 2-year degree in it was called Applied Data Processing. I then went to Akron. The gentleman I worked for in Ashland, Ohio, moved to Akron, asked me to come with him. So when I came to Akron, I enrolled at the University of Akron and got an undergraduate degree in MIS and Operations Management. And then along the way, I enrolled at Emory University in Atlanta and got a master's from Emory. So that's kind of as my career path was progressing, I kind of had a parallel academic path. Now, I spent probably the first 10 years learning technology. And in the early 80s, I went to work for a company by the name of Camelot Music. I don't know, you even know what this is? CDs? Believe it or not, we used to sell these things in record stores. And Camelot Music, which was based here in North Canton, was one of the largest music retailers in the country. Well, when I walked into Camelot in 1980, the company had about 20 stores, was doing about $30 million a year, and had no technology at all. So over the next 15 years, we made Camelot one of the most sophisticated technology retailers in the country, technology that made selling music possible. And I also learned a lot about warehousing. I learned a lot about transportation. I learned a lot about logistics. I learned a lot about material handling management. So I began to learn business. So I had the technology from a lot of years doing that. I gained a tremendous amount of knowledge about business working for Camelot, and I was pursuing my academic programs. So then I left Camelot. I went to work for a company by the name of Pioneer Standard Electronics. It was a large distributor up in Cleveland, about a $4 billion company. And we sold all the pieces and parts that go into cell phones and computers and anything electronic. And when I was at Pioneer, I was in charge of IT, and I was also very involved in the business. We had warehouses all over the world that we distributed product through to our customers. So we would buy from Intel, and we would sell to Dell, as an example. Stayed at Pioneer, and there's a lot of history, obviously, beneath this. And I was at Pioneer for about 9 years, and then I went to the University of Akron. And I was the lead IT person at the university, and we provided all the technology that was used for teaching, learning, and research. So any technology at the university, my team, which is a group of about 250 people, provided that technology for the campus. And when Luis Esperanza, the former president, retired, I decided to go off and do something else, because I loved Luis, and I knew things were going to change when he left. And they did. Fortunately, the University of Akron is back on the mend. It's going to return just to where it was before. It's a great school. So after leaving the university, I went to work in the plumbing and heating and building supply industry. So I work for a company by the name of Famous Enterprises, and we distribute plumbing, heating, lighting, and building supplies to contractors, plumbers, HVAC contractors, and home builders all around the country. Again, heavy technology, that's one of my responsibilities. I manage all of our warehouses that we ship product through. I manage pricing, which is we determine out of our 30,000 items what we're going to charge the customer based on the type of customer they are and the size and so on. So again, a lot of technology, a lot of overlap with business. So that's kind of me. Now what I'd like to do today, I'd really like to have a conversation. I'll lecture, I'll talk at you if you want me to, but I'd really prefer that if you have questions, stop and ask me, because I want to move on from me now and talk about IT. And I've got a couple of jump drives. If anyone asks me a question that will benefit the group, I'll give the jump drive. I think I've got 3 of those. So feel free to interrupt and ask me a question. So, IT professionals, who are we? We make it possible, unfortunately, to download music, put my company out of business. Fortunately, we sold Camelot Music in 1993. The industry, thanks to iTunes and the iPod, disappeared in 1999. So there were thousands of music stores around the country that all got put out of business by iTunes and the iPod. And fortunately, the owner of Camelot had the foresight, and I had something to do with that, to sell the business when he did, because he did really, really well, and the people who sold it to did really, really poorly because it went out of business. Short story, I'm at a Sony music plant in 1989. Sony made CDs. CDs were coming out of pressing plants as fast as they could produce them. And I said to them, where's the music come from? I see the CDs dropping out of the burners, but where's the music come from? And he said, we'll show you. He took me into this huge room, just full of computers, server after server after server. And I looked at that and I said, oh shit, we're in trouble. Because we have 400 music stores. They're sending music to users with no stores. I went back to Paul David, the founder and owner of Camelot, and I said, Paul, we either need to get into the electronic distribution business or you need to sell the company. He sold the company. So, what else do we do? We obviously build apps. I think the last time I read, there were 2 million apps available, Apple and Android apps available, and more are being created every day. By the way, this presentation is available and I'll be happy to share it with you so you don't have to take copious notes, because I really prefer that you ask me questions. What else do we do? We create PC software. Not just PC software, but large server software. We create computer games. People in IT create computer games, and you guys obviously play a lot more of them than I do. We created Microsoft Office, pretty much the standard. We design systems that are used in the event of disaster. You know, when you think about a disaster occurring, a hurricane occurring, the most important thing to do is reestablish communications so the medical professionals and first responders can communicate. So setting up temporary cell towers, setting up access to the internet, those are the kinds of things that other computer types like me do. We make online banking and ATMs possible. So, you know, if you really think about it, and Tom made this point a moment ago, you can't, I don't know that I can think of any profession that doesn't have some reliance on technology. Somewhere. We created Google. I wish it was me. If it was, I probably wouldn't be here talking with you. It's amazing what Google now has gone off and what they're doing with creating driverless cars and many, many other really cool technologies. So there's some really smart computer people, smarter than me, that are building all these things. So within the computer profession, what are the jobs we have? With security analysts, well, we've heard a lot about security recently. I think the Democratic National Committee would look like it had a little stronger security. WikiLeaks, a lot of opportunity there. We're software engineers, we're people that write software. Network engineers, people that figure out how to connect things all together. The last I heard is there's 10 billion devices attached to the internet, all three networks. We're webmasters. We develop web pages. We do digital marketing. It's the visual stuff that's really cool if you're graphically oriented, which I'm not. We're data scientists. This is a huge opportunity. Companies have spent millions, billions of dollars creating data. They've got all this data and they're trying to mine it. They're trying to figure out what it says. Business analysts and computer support specialists. Security analysts, you know, we talked, I made some of my comments as I went through. Security is huge. When I was at the University of Akron, because of our research side of the organization, I had a screen on my computer, a screen of the world, and I could see attacks coming from Asia as they were trying to steal our tire technology, because there's a tire company in Asia that wanted to build tires, and they were constantly trying to get through our firewalls to steal research that our researchers were doing. And I could see on a map every day of the globe, and it would light up green, yellow, red, and Asia was always red because the Chinese were attempting to steal our intellectual property. So, and that was every day, every hour, every day. So the goal was building firewalls and security that would prevent that from occurring. We've all heard about WikiLeaks on the news recently, and all the things going on with Hillary Clinton and others. Target, you may recall a couple years ago, the Target Corporation lost a bunch of credit card information. And what someone actually did is they hacked into the building maintenance system. So the computers controlled the heating and air conditioning, and those HVAC control systems were connected to the same network that the credit card machines were on. So they came in through the HVAC system, onto the network, onto the credit card machines, and stole personal identification information. Target lost millions as a result of that. The guy that ran Target got fired. I'm certain there were a lot of computer people that got fired, but the CEO got fired. The #1 guy got fired because that happened. Big, big opportunity if you're interested in technology, big opportunity in security. Software engineers, again, that's programming, that's development. Mobile apps are exploding. Network engineers, connecting all this stuff together. Another huge opportunity. At the bottom, the Internet of Things basically is anything connected to the Internet. Could be a refrigerator, could be a computer server, could be a home security system. Many of those devices are connected now to the Internet. They're coined the Internet of Things. Today, there's about 10 billion devices connected. The projection is that by 2019, 40 billion devices will be connected to the Internet. So someone is going to have to build that connectivity and manage it. Another great career opportunity. I wish I was your age. I wish I could do it again. Webmasters, websites, it's all about digital. It's all about graphical. So if you're graphically inclined, you want to build websites, another huge opportunity. Digital marketing, and marketing is kind of converging. Paper marketing, digital marketing, it's kind of coming all together. Data scientists, another huge opportunity. As I indicated, every company I worked for spent millions of dollars gathering data about their customers, about their items, about their costs, about their business. Now what they're trying to do is say, okay, we got all this data. How do we mine it for information? And how do we mine it to give us an idea as a leadership team which direction to go? The companies that are doing it really well, Google, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, they know how to mine data. Those ads that come up on Facebook, it's because there's some data scientist somewhere that said, if you look at these things, you're probably going to be interested in those. And they do that connection through data. Again, if you're really interested in a great career, the data scientist path would be a really good path to go down. Business analysts, that's the connection between the business and the computer people. This is really where I pride myself a lot in being able to go out and understand a business issue and come back to my IT group and come up with technology solutions for those issues. Now, because computers are becoming used by everyone, that role will probably evolve, because now accountants and attorneys and tax people, they know as much about computers as we do. So it's and computer support specialists. Obviously, this is a good place to start. If you, and Jason and I have talked a lot about this, if you want to start somewhere, starting at the desktop and working your way into a business is a good way to start. You guys know PCs, you know tablets, you know cell phones much better than I ever will. So, even though I do know how to use it, and I do Facebook accounts. So, what does it take to be an IT professional? You need to be a problem solver. You need to be leaders and team players. You need to be planners, creative, curious, ambitious. Here's the important one at the bottom. IT people are like engineers. We really don't like to talk to people. And I can tell you, 30 years ago when I started, it would have been impossible for me to get up in front of you and talk. I would have been scared shitless. And I would have been shaking. And I worked hard, I mean really hard, to develop a comfort level in getting up in front of people and talking. And for those of you that are a little quieter and want to sit back and kind of be an engineer, be an IT guy and not be bothered, work on this. This is critical. That's every bit as important as a college degree. So, now I'm certain there are a number of you that don't have that issue, but I did. Going forward, and you know what's happening in IT is that clearly the demand for IT talent is exceeding supply, so it's the old rule of economics. And as demand goes up and supply remains equal, the price of that demand goes up. So why is that happening? People like me are retiring. I'm 62. I've been doing this since 1973. So at some point, I'm going to go do something else. I just trying to figure out what that is. The other thing is, for whatever reason, students aren't enrolling in IT programs in universities. So, you know, the challenge that Akron and Kent and Stark and every other school has is getting people like you interested in IT, so you'll sign up for programs and fill these opportunities. So clearly, the demand is exceeding the supply by a lot. And one of the reasons for the demand is all the explosion in development, applications, driverless cars, etc. So a couple myths. There will not be any jobs when I graduated. It used to be that parents had concerns the jobs were going to go offshore and not be available. Not true. Here's the growth in jobs from 06 to 16, and you can see how many of those jobs that grew very rapidly were computer related. The network engineers, again, connecting all those Internet of Things, software engineers, developers, mobile app developers. There's personal financial advisors, 41%, but IT at 53%. Therapists, computer analysts. The point in all this is there was huge growth from 06 to 16. And you say, okay, that's nice. Well, what about the future? Just from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they're projecting to grow 12% from 14 to 24, which is faster than many, many other occupations. So there's going to be a huge demand curve as we go into the future. The reason? The emphasis on cloud computing. I hate that word. All cloud computing means is I take the computers I have at Famous and I put them in someone else's data center. That's all cloud computing means. It just means that I, as a company, no longer have my own data centers. And at Famous, we're about a $700 million company. We don't have a data center. Our servers run up in Cleveland in a commercial data center. Now, my team supports them, but we don't have the servers on site. They're in the cloud. The other reason for the demand is data. Data is going to continue to explode. And just the volume of data. The Internet of Things, we talked a moment ago about how that's going to expand. It is expanding as we talk. And then the ongoing demand for mobile computing. It used to be that it was all about a computer terminal or a desktop computer. Today, it's all about this thing I carry around on my belt. This is the way we're going to interface to all technology going forward. So again, there's going to be an explosion with these portable devices and all the connectivity back to the data centers in the cloud. All IT-related jobs are getting outsourced. There was a point in time, probably 15 years ago, we thought that might happen because it was cheaper in India than it is here. A lot of companies tried it, including companies I work for. Some jobs are going to go offshore. They have gone offshore and they're going to stay offshore. But they're entry-level programming jobs and jobs that you wouldn't really want long-term anyway. All the applications that we run that are unique to our business, that are critical to our business, they're not going anywhere. We're keeping them in North America. And many, many other companies feel the same way, be it Smucker, Goodyear, or whomever. This is the lesson we learned at the bottom, which we didn't anticipate, was the language barriers and the cultural differences between Asia and India and the United States. They became much bigger issues than we anticipated. That's why a lot of us, like me, offshore technology support and brought it back. I don't know if you've ever had the experience of calling Time Warner Cable or whomever for support, and you get someone that you know is out of the country, and you have a really difficult time communicating with them. Customers push back really hard, so we brought it back. We brought those kind of jobs back to the U.S. IT-related educational degrees are not worth less, but worth less than others. Here's just an example of some starting salaries. And who would have ever thought that computer people would make as much money as engineers? But we do. And that's starting salaries. And then you can read the rest of it as some comparison. And the help desk support, that's just the starting point. But that just gives you an idea of how the entry-level salaries compare across the industries listed. So, the typical starting range for IT is in that 50-ish range. So the 45 to 55 is the range. There's some other jobs that I compared it to, just to give you an idea of what the starting salaries are. And I can tell you where you make a lot of money is when you bridge from the technology to the business. People that hire me because I can solve business problems. I can understand the business problems and solve them with technology. My boss can't do that. And he's a pretty wealthy CEO. So he hired me to do it. And salaries, again, the economics curve, as the demand goes up and the supply drops or doesn't keep up, the salaries are going to go right with the demand. So it's inevitable as the demand increases. If the supply doesn't increase at the same rate, the salaries inevitably have to go up. So, Mark, that's just economics 101. It's a guy thing. Well, at one point it was. And I guess probably 15 years ago, it started to change. Did you know that some of the largest consulting firms in the world, my daughter works for one, Deloitte, have more women than men? I would have never thought 50 years ago that would happen, but it did, and it's a good thing. So what can you do? What I would encourage you to do is gain as much exposure to different technologies that you have interest in as possible. Operating systems like Windows, databases like Microsoft SQL, programming languages if you like to program, mobile app development. It's really interesting that the students at Akron, when I was the CIO there, it was amazing. The mobile apps that students would build on their own. A couple of which we adopted at the university to run the university. Now, at some point, and then of course networking with the 40 billion Internet of Things connectivity that's coming. So learn about networking. But every bit as important, you've got to learn about business. I was delighted when Jason told me earlier today that he's going to do IT and an MBA. That's exactly what the slide says you need to do. And I suggested that to him at a coffee shop a couple years ago, and he listened, maybe 3 years ago. Thank you for that. So you got to learn not just the technology, you've got to learn business, because there's an expectation you're going to know both. Get as much exposure as you can, find internships, get part-time jobs in retail stores, Best Buy, Office Max, whatever. Offer to help your IT people at the high school. Continue to play around as a hobbyist. If you have interest in computers, you can learn a ton on your own. I'll never forget, I invited Steve Wozniak. Does that name mean anything to you? Steve Wozniak was really the creator of the Apple computer. Steve came to the University of Akron to speak. He didn't have a college degree. He created the Apple computer, which Steve Jobs went and marketed with no college degree. And I asked him how he do it. He said, I taught myself. So he got books and he read them and he tried and he kept trying. And he built the first Apple computer ever. And him and Jobs worked together for many, many years. Steve's kind of the mad scientist behind the scenes, and Jobs was the marketing expert that was taking it to market. So in summary, IT careers, I believe, I can tell you I've had a great run. I've had a lot of fun. When we sold Camelot Music, I'm not going to tell you the number, but the guy that owned the company, his name was Paul David. When we sold the business, we got $40 million more for it because of the technology that was put into it by myself and my team. After Paul sold the business, he walked in my office one day. He was gone, handed me an envelope with a check in it and said thanks. And it was very, very much appreciated. So, and you know, those are the opportunities that you have. So it goes well beyond what kind of salary that you can make. I've had just, my career has progressed very, very quickly because of my ability to connect technology and business issues. There was a lot of flexibility. I've worked in retail, I've worked in manufacturing, I've worked in distribution, I've worked in healthcare, I've worked in higher education, I've worked in the automotive industry, and now I'm in the wholesale distribution business for plumbing and heating. And IT has provided me the ability to move through those different opportunities. Because under the covers, the technology is all the same. It doesn't matter what the business is. It's new technology every day. It's amazing. I thought as I got older, my life would slow down, and it's been just the opposite because things are changing so quickly. There will be jobs when you go to work that don't exist today. When you go back and think about the people that use data well, Amazon, Google, Facebook, they didn't exist 20 years ago. I think Amazon is 20 years old now. And they did multi-times business that Sears and Kmart, which existed for years, are doing. Business needs IT workers. You know, again, it's that connection between technology and business. You can't separate it. And the demand is high and will continue to be high. I chose IT. I think my father was gone for directing me that way. I had no clue what he was talking about. And the best part was neither did he. But it worked out really well. What to do next? If you're interested, you owe it to yourself to take a step. Do something. Don't let the opportunity pass. You know, it's interesting to me. I actually love going to work every day. My wife says to me, why don't you quit? Why don't you just retire? Because I could, and I just don't want to. I love getting up and going to work every day. And I love the people that I work for, the crazy business I'm in. I've really been very fortunate that I've selected a job I love, and as a result, it's not work. So, seek information, you know, and I'm surprised I did this. When I was at Akron, I would have never put Kent State up. So, because we're rivals, and I didn't like Kent, but it's a great school. And Star State, Kara Jones, the president of Star, is doing amazing things for a community college here in our local county. And there's many, many other schools that are really, really good. So, research IT jobs. If you're curious about what jobs are available, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there's all kinds of jobs listed, and they describe in some detail about what the jobs are. So I think this is another really key point. It's all about networking. Believe it or not, old guys like me, you may not like to spend time with people like me, but I love to spend time with people like you, because you're going down the same path that I did. And I would be delighted, and I can tell you, a lot of my counterparts in other companies would be delighted to network with you and show you, help you find, if you're interested in IT, the path you want to be on. And if it's not IT, any other professional. It's amazing to me how people are willing to tell their story. Little tip I tell my daughters, you want to communicate with people, ask them about themselves. You know, and you will be amazed the direction you'll get. Work with your advisors in this group, us, to help you find different paths. My contact information, Jim Sage, that's my personal email address, that's my cell number. So anyone that's interested in talking with me personally, I would be delighted to do it. If you want a copy of the presentation, send to me an email and I'll be happy to send it to you. And no one asked me any questions, so I get to keep the jump drives. But let me open it up and just ask, are there any questions about what I did, how I did it, what I think the opportunities are, please.
Okay, earlier you said something about the jobs that are being existed. But now, are there any jobs that I don't really exist?
I'm sorry, I didn't
Are there-
get the
sorry,
mic.
Test.
Earlier you said there are jobs that you believe will exist in the future, but are there any jobs, IT jobs, that you don't believe exist in the future because of just like further development?
That's actually a really insightful question. There are jobs that you notice, the things I feel really good about, networking and data scientists, I really focused on those. That business analyst role, that connection, I think between IT and the business, that the need for that's going to change. I don't know the way it's going to change because the business is learning. The accountants I work with, the famous, know as much about the applications they use as I ever will. So that role's going to change. But I'm trying to think if there's anything else I would steer you away from. I really don't think so. Because I think once you're into the industry, you can move pretty quickly. You can go a lot of different directions. I remember about 20 years ago, I reached kind of a Y in my career path. One side was go technical and be really deep technically. The other was go administrative and be really deep with the connection between IT and the business. I chose the administrative way, and it worked for me. I've got colleagues that are really, really heavy technical people too, and they love that. So, did that answer your question? I wish I had a more definitive answer, please.
I was wondering, do you think that it is essential to have a college degree or minor in IT, or any sort of IT, to be involved in that sort of field?
Another really good question. Is it essential to start? No. If you go get some certifications, a network certification from Cisco or a certification from Microsoft, you'll get in the door. You'll get in the entry-level door. You will very quickly realize, which I did, that there are ceilings that get put in, that if you don't have degrees, you're not going to go beyond that level. And what I found was, the first ceiling was, I needed a 2-year degree. Then I needed a 4-year degree. And as I progressed, I needed a graduate degree. So I got in the door without it, and I think you still can, but you're very quickly going to run up against that ceiling.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so I was reading your bio and it said you became a CLO in large companies like Purdue, Standard, Electronic. My question to you is, how do you deal with the pressure of that position, and how long did it take for you to get to where you are now?
Well, as I indicated, I started in 1973. That was my first job right out of high school. And it's 2017, and I just turned 62. Ooh, 62. What you heard from me, right? But, you know, it was a progression. You know, what happened at Pioneer, and that's when I realized without a graduate degree I was going to have trouble. Because I worked at Camelot Music and I loved it. But we were doing about $500 million a year, roughly. And I knew to go to work for a company like Pioneer, a $4 billion company, there was going to be an expectation that I would think on a different level. And that's when I realized that I needed a graduate degree. So my academic pursuits were oftentimes needed to enable me to step into the bigger role. What was interesting, I don't know that the pressure was any different in a $4 billion company than it was in a $500 million record retailer. It was just more. You know, at Camelot in IT, because I did a lot of other things other than IT, but I had probably, I want to say 40 people, 50 people. At Pioneer, I had 400 because we were just that much larger. So it was just scale more than it was pressure. And as you noticed, I said earlier, I picked a profession I love. It's not stressful for me. It just isn't. I need to work out more. That'll help my stress a little bit. Anything else?
By the way, the gentleman that he worked for that sold the business is, his wife lives right across the street from us in Dayton. They're the ones with the David Foundation, and we had 3 students who received scholarships from the David Foundation last year, 3 camp students. And I believe those, Jim, they're $10,000 a year renewable through school. So wonderful work. That money is at work
I'm not
through education and everything. So it's terrific. Really.
Knowing David, knowing the Davids, especially Paul. Paul's deceased, he's passed. But knowing Paul, that doesn't surprise me at all. Paul started Camelot Music in 1956 with $200 that he borrowed from a friend that had jukeboxes because he had no money. We sold it in 1993 for $420 million. So, and that was Paul and a group of us that were all in over our heads. But we worked really, really hard, and we had a lot of fun together. And Paul was one of the most generous people that I've ever worked for. I'll never forget it. What he taught me, though, was how important it is to be good to people and to treat people well. If you treat people well, it always comes back. And that's what he did. And his wife, Carol, is still alive. They've got the David Foundation. Some of their kids still live in town. They're just wonderful, wonderful people. So that's my story. I appreciate the opportunity to share it.
Jim, can I ask one question?
Of course you may.
From many careers today, you're working 80 hours, 70, 80 hours, 60, 70, 80 hours. From a work-life balance perspective, where does IT fit in?
That's an interesting question and a challenge I've always had a problem dealing with. There was a point where I was working the 70 hours a week, but it wasn't because the business expected me to, it's because I did it. And I wish, now that I look back, I probably wouldn't have done it that way. Something you'll learn is that a business, I don't care if it's a manufacturing company, a distribution company, a retail company, a hospital, a legal firm, any firm will take every bit as much as you'll give it. Nobody ever said to me I had to work 70 hours, I just did it. And so the one thing about your generation, because I see it in my daughters, is the desire for a balanced work life. You got to do what it takes to get the job done, but you don't have to work 80 hours a week to do it. So, one of the things I really enjoy about the company I work for now is work-life balance is critical. So the CEO, he arrives at 7:30, by 5:30 he's gone. And the expectation is you're going to do the same. Because what happens if you don't do that, bad things happen. Families break up, heart attacks occur, really bad things happen. So, the other thing, to that point though, whatever you do, and I know I'm a little pudgy, I apologize for that, I'm trying to work on it. Take care of yourself. I think it's every bit as important that you stay healthy and you eat healthy as it is that you manage your work hours. So, and my friend Bruce keeps reminding me that I need to work out more. Anything else? It's truly been a pleasure. Got my email address, reach out to me. I'll be happy to share it with you. So, and best of luck.
Thank you, Jim. I think you had a couple of good questions. You can hand out those jump drives. Terrific job. Mr. Sage is not fooling you, and Jacob can attest to that. If you want to talk about IT, again, he's a senior executive. and a CIO. But he will talk to you, he'll give you career guidance, he will help you out, mentor you, correct, Jacob? And he's not going to steer you wrong. So if there's anything you need to know about IT. Now, it's very interesting. I'm looking at the career matrix, and we currently have Mrs. Brunowell, 36 in camp, right? So not in college, but in high school. And we have 20 students that are interested in business. So 20 out of the 36. I can tell you 4 years ago when we started this program, it might have been 2 or 3. So there's 20 that are interested in business and only 4 in IT. So I would highly encourage those business people to think a little bit more about IT, especially combining majors and minors. Don't forget, you're going to graduate. You're going to be 2 years academically ahead. Yeah, Chelsea's like, ugh. But I'm going to encourage you to take it easy. Let the maturity level catch up to your educational levels. Take a minor. Yeah, it might be another semester or 2, but don't rush it. You're okay. And besides which, that's going to pay huge dividends when you get a job. That major and that minor and those skills and that degree that you have are going to be worth more money. So don't rush it. The other thing I'll never forget, and was somewhere where I was going with the work-life balance, 1995, we moved from Connecticut to California, San Francisco. And we bought a house, and the person we bought the house from was moving to Switzerland. And he's going to have a house at the foot of the Swiss Alps. And I think he was Austrian or German or something. So I got a discussion with him. This is 1995. Just think about how long ago this was. And he was in IT. And I said, what are you going to Switzerland for? He says, because I'm in IT and I can work from anywhere in the world, and that's where I choose to work. So IT offers you some great opportunities. There are a tremendous amount of housewives that are going back to school and taking IT because it's a job that they can do at home and they can do from the home. You can always find something to do. So think about it in those terms too. Less stress related. The fact that you have a problem that's correctable and you can attack it, and you don't need to be a rocket scientist to get it done. So a lot of advantages to this.